think we might be live. I should have said at the beginning of this that this carries a swearing warning. I did think everything was going to go alright and so swearing might not be an issue. But if it keeps this up with no sound and all this malarkey, swearing might become an issue. For those of you that know me of old... Oh, I think we're alright now. Can you give me a thumbs up, please, if you can actually hear what I'm saying? I'm really sorry about this. To make matters worse, we don't know what it was, so we don't know how to resolve it in the future. However, if you can hear me, thumbs up please, that would be great. Let me know what's going on and I shall continue where I left off. Any thumbs up? Anybody hear me? Comment?
You wait for 20 seconds or so, don't you?
Yeah, I know there's a bit of a feedback loop. Well, anyway, I'll carry on. What I have done is I've covered the board in my background colour, which is Sennelier Abstract Primary Blue, and I wanted it a bit lighter than this, and so I mixed it through with it's Peebo actually, but it's a good enough paint, but it's not the best paint in the world. So I'm using it up, mixing it with things and whatever. If you want a bright white that's going to stay bright white, you need golden or Matisse or even Liquitex Professional, one of the real artist's colours. I do actually have some Sennelier Abstract Titanium White. I haven't tried it yet. When I have, I'll let you know what it's like. So all that I did was I used my spritzer. I gave it the bare canvas, 2 spritzers. Then I mixed up some blue and some white with my little artist's knife. I use the artist's knife because if you use your brush, the paint gets right up into the ferrule and it's so hard to clean. And eventually it'll dry and it'll split it apart and you won't have a very nice brush. Be sure and clean your artist's knife after you've done your mixing. And that's that. So it's had 2 coats, it's been dried with a hairdryer, so now it's time to move on to the next part of our painting. Is everything going all right? Can people hear? Can people see? Everybody happy?
I think so.
I think so. Okay.
Not there's many there. I think they might have given up for the evening.
Oh dear, have you given up on me? You need to blow up your reference photograph to 6 inches square. Actually, you'll find when you do that, this isn't a square photograph. So you need to make your longest edge 6 inches. I mistakenly thought 15 centimetres was 6 inches, but as you can see, it's a wee bit short. But that doesn't really matter. Now, around the side of this reference photograph, we've got daisies that are out of focus. They're in the background, so we can't see them very clearly. This is how I resolved the issue when I did mine. I did them in a very abstract manner, and it's not realist, but much more detail on this one, and that the abstract ones don't take your eye so much. But I'll show you another trick to push them even further back. So in order to do these ones around the side, we need some titanium white, because if we use the mixing white, when it dries, they just all disappear. You can't really see them. I mean, it's quite a nice idea to do this first and then just pick some out in the bright white that will stand out. So we'll do that first. We'll use the less expensive white. Yuck. Put some of that on the palette. Maybe we touch more. Right, okay. We all right?
You might need a palette, that's better. Creeping left.
Creeping left. Creeping round the bend. Right, I've just kicked the camera as well, never mind. So the way that we do this is by use a brush that you're quite happy with the size of. I find for doing things that I don't want detail on, the bigger the brush the better, because if you use a small brush, you kind of get caught up in doing detail work, and that's not what these background flowers are about. They're very out of focus. So dip the end of your brush only in your paint, and this just once again is the less expensive of the paints, and as it dries it will recede into the background sort of naturally. We're just going to make petals. Be, you know, liberal with them. Put them anywhere that you fancy. It doesn't matter if it's some bits are thicker, some bits are under other bits. It doesn't matter. They're all in the background. Be fine. So I'm just being quite slap happy here. Don't copy this stroke by stroke. Do your own thing. See what you can make out of it. Some of these will get will be behind the big daisy eventually, so we won't actually see all of these. So there we are. That's fine. It's good enough. Wash your brush out, and I'll just put some green on there. We'll have a bit of greenery. And I'm going to use the same. No, I'm going to use a smaller brush now. This is a size 4 bright. It's just a bit smaller than the brush that I put them on. Actually, already you can see that these are fading away, fading into the background. I mean, this one here is almost impasto. It's quite thick. So I'm just dampening my brush, wiping it off on a rag. I'm just going to get some green, and we're just going to put some green in. Once again, willy-nilly. I'm going to put this shade of green in, and then I'm going to put some white through the green and come back and go on top of it. Need some stems and stuff up here. There's no right and wrong way for this, really, there isn't. So that's some green in there. Let's mix a little bit of white through a little bit of that green, so we've got a lighter green colour. Load your brush up by brushing it through the paint one way, flip your brush over, back on the other side. Now just go over the top of some of these to give them a bit more interest. So there, okay. Now at this stage, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to get the hairdryer out and dry that before we put the next colour, which is going to be the yellows.
They're muted.
Yeah, I don't know if we dare mute you. I'm sorry, you're going to have to live with it, because I don't dare mute you, which would be in an ideal world. That's what would happen.
Cover your ears.
Cover your ears, chaps.
Or cover your eyes if you want.
Yeah, cover your eyes as well. I've got a really thick bit here that's been quite resistant to drying. Sorry.
Yeah, it's me. I'm the thick bit.
No, you're not. Right, I'll leave it like that. I think this sort of impasto-y bit here could do with drying a bit longer, but we'll, let's charge forward. There's a rugby match on tonight, Mr. Handyman needs to see, so we're charging forward. Now then, we are now going to put the centres in these, and I've selected 2 yellows. I honestly think that 1 is enough, and you can mix some white through it if you want it lighter. In the reference photograph, you can see these are quite orangey, actually. And so I think we'll be fine with this because we want this to recede a little bit. So just, this is yellow ochre. And we don't need very much, really. It's probably fine. It's so easy to get carried away with the amount of paint that you need on your palette. It goes a long way. Right, now we don't want a big brush for this. Not the big brush we've been using. So I shall select a smaller one. This is one of my lovely Zen Art filberts. And I'm just going to mix a bit of white in through this yellow ochre. Because not only will it lighten it up, but the yellow ochre is quite a transparent colour and it will disappear. So you really need to either put white down first where you're going to put your yellow ochre, or mix it with some white to give it a bit of opacity. So then we're just going to put our daisy centres in and put them where you think that they might be. I mean, you know, it might not look like that's where they are. Some of them will be overlapping other ones. This one's right in the corner. Ooh, that's a really impasto-y one there. One there, one there, one there, I think. Okay, so that's basically our background daisies done. I do want to show you a way to knock these further into the background before we start doing the large daisy. So, sorry guys, I really do need to dry this time really properly. Yeah, I think that's good enough. Good enough. Now then, in order to make these recede, as you can see in the reference photograph, they're very much behind. They're not competing for our attention like this fellow is. They're behind. And one of the ways, there's several ways, one of the ways of doing that is get your big brush out again, make sure that it's clean, rinse it off in the water. It's amazing how much paint these brushes hold when you actually think that you've cleaned them. So clean it as best you can. Take a rag, wipe off any paint that you can. And now we're going to take some clean water. This is what I mean. I was so organised. Everything was really organised. So this is just clean water, and we're going into that blue that we used for the sky or background or whatever. Keep adding water. Oh, sorry. Keep adding water. We're looking to make what they call a wash here. So there's still quite a lot of pigment in there. So it's getting a bit better. That's fine. So when the pigment is really, really thin, and we're just going to brush over these, and you'll see instantly that it knocks them right back. So the secret is lots and lots of water. And the reason I've chosen to use the same blue as the background colour is that if I overlap where these are and it goes onto the background, it won't show up. So there, that just knocks them back nicely. So I hope you can see the difference that's made. It's stopped them being so bright. It's stopped them competing with this one, which is the star of the show. That was a very thin coat, so it takes seconds to seconds for it to dry. Right, now then, let's move on to the big fella. For this, you need some transfer paper. You can draw this yourself. If you're confident in drawing this, draw it. I'm just a beginner and I'm not confident in drawing this, and so I'm going to transfer it. I don't want you to feel like you're cheating. For years and years, I felt that using transfer paper was in some way cheating. And so I taught myself to draw by hours and hours and hours of practice. And then when I could draw, for some reason, I suddenly thought it was all right to use transfer paper. So I think it's a perfectly legitimate tool to use. That's what it's made for. So this is what it is. It's Saral wax-free acid paper, transfer paper sampler. And in this sampler pack, as they call it, you get 5 colours. White, graphite, red, blue and yellow. This is obviously the yellow one. And depends on what colour that you want to make your tracing onto. Depends what colour you select, obviously. I've selected yellow because I had it out already. White would do the trick. So pop that on there. Put your reference picture on there. Make sure that it's where you want it to be. I'm going to have to extend my stem down to the bottom because, as I said, I cut the reference the wrong size. So what we need is a pen, ballpoint pen, sharp pencil, something that's going to go right through. It's the very coloured side, the bright coloured side that goes down. So hold it in place and just go round your daisy, round the edges of your daisy. You don't have to spend hours and hours doing this, just give us a clue to what's happening where. Help us out a bit. Ultimately, you probably will paint over this, but if you don't, it comes off with a rubber, and it's the best way to get rid is one of these plastic rubbers. They don't leave any, they don't take the paint off with it. So just draw around your daisy. You can be fairly lackadaisical. Oh God, I'm so funny.
You are a wit.
I am a wit.
Or at least something that rhymes with it.
Yeah. Was that my wit's end earlier? I've still no idea what that was about.
Oh, I finally found your mute button after all these years.
Thanks. And just draw in the centre if you want. It gives us a good clue. Now I'm going to draw in the stalk, the stem. And as I say, I'm going to have to extend mine because it only comes to there. So there we have it. There's our... Can you see that clearly? Maybe should have done that in another colour actually. It doesn't show up very well on camera. That's a shame. But anyway, it's there. You can see it? Can you see it? That's good. So what we're going to do first of all is block it out. We're going to use, when you look at the reference picture, there's not actually that much white, not real white on this daisy. Your brain is telling you it's white and that it's all white, but it's actually not. You see the shadows, and a lot of these leaves have got shadows, petals have got shadows on them. And so what we want to do first is mix a very, very, very light grey, because that is actually the background. The other thing that I should mention to you at the moment is probably the most important thing in all of art is where the light source is coming from. We'll talk about this more later because this is just a really beginner's lesson. But if the light source is coming from this side on this daisy, then it will come from this side on everything else that's in your painting. If you're drawing a carton horse, whatever it may be, the light is the same on every object, and therefore the shadow's always on the same side of every object. Here, it looks as if the light is coming from behind the daisy. It's landing on here because this is the lightest part, and this part here is just in shadow. And you can see, yeah, you can see also that this top of this bit in the middle is lighter than the bottom part of the centre. So it doesn't really matter for this because there's only one object, it's our daisy. But if you're going to be putting other things in, you really would have to pay good attention to that. So we're going to mix up a very light grey. And I've got some black, but you need the titchiest bit. I'm loath to actually put it out on the palette. I'm just going to wheedle some out. Maybe a little bit more than that, but not much. Yeah, I'm sure that's fine. I'm sure that will be fine. So I'll just mix that up into a very light silvery sort of colour. That's probably still too dark. We'll take a bit more white. I think we're about there. I think that's good. Just get rid of the excess on there. Wipe my brush. So we just want to fill this entire area that we've transferred, but not the centre. But it doesn't matter if you go over the centre, because we're going to be putting that in later. It doesn't, you know, it's all right. Nothing will happen. Nothing tragic will happen anyway. So we'll just go around the shape. Just on a slightly more rigid brush than that. Just go around the shape that we've got, and it's just an exercise in filling in. Make sure that you've got enough paint, because otherwise the blue shows through, and that's not what we're after at all. I think not enough paint on your brush is a common problem that beginners have. I mean, you're aware of the cost of it, you know, and it just seems easier, more manageable if you haven't got very much on there. But you do need some. You need some paint to lay some paint colour down. So as I say, it's just fill in, paint by numbers as it were. Let's have a look at what that one is. And I thought that one might be one behind, but it's not. So what are you lot all doing? Are you all painting, or is it morning where you are, or evening? It's evening here in the UK. It's almost 8 o'clock at night. I've spent most of today, as has Mr. Handyman, trying to make this work, and we actually thought we had made it work. I'm really disappointed to learn that we hadn't. I feel like I'm rushing a bit now, to be honest.
No rush. What else have people got to do on a Saturday evening?
It's Friday. Oh, you think it's going to last until Saturday? Yeah, it might actually.
Dorothy says she's painting fabric cards.
Oh, nice.
Ziggy Farr, now she's naked in bed watching you.
Oh, Ziggy, that's an image.
Don't judge me.
That's an image. Thanks. Thank you. You deserve it, actually. You've been painting a load of furniture this week. You've done really well. I've got a sideboard to paint soon, like tomorrow. So when you come to put this colour over the ones that we've sent into the background, you can see that even although it's a grey white, it really does push them back. I'm not usually short of things to say, to be honest.
Cal surprise.
I know, something's going to go wrong again, I just know. This isn't the tidiest, okay? I'm not that fussed, really, to be honest. It's a beginner's piece. Nearly there, nearly made it all the way around. Hooray. It'd be much easier with a different brush, but I'm too pig-headed to change it. With this heavy body acrylic, you do need a fairly solid brush, a brush that doesn't have a lot of give in it, because the paint's quite resistant. So I would advocate that you use quite a brush that's got a lot of spring back when you bend the bristles. Then art brushes are lovely. Right, so I think we're kind of there with that. I'm just going to put my stalk in. And for that, I'm going to use this little 1/4 inch angle shader. You see, it's angled. It's really good for getting straight lines, thin lines. I'm just going to mix a little bit of white in with that green, because I think that green has a tendency to be transparent. So I'm just mixing a little bit of white in with that green, and then I'm going to go down my stem, which is in front of all the background flowers, of course. So if you use the angle shader face on like that, you'll get a nice straight line. So there we are. And I'm just going to lighten it up a bit more, because of course we've got the light situation and we want that stem to look like it's got a bit of life, like it's curled. So I'm just going to, don't be afraid to turn your painting round. It's perfectly fine. I'm left-handed and I find it easier going some ways rather than others. So, you know, if you find it easier one way than another, turn your work around. So I'm just putting a lighter stripe up this side of the stem, which, can you see, it gives it the image of being more 3D, being rounded. Excellent, that's good. Right, so still maintaining this little 1/4 inch angle shader, we need to start thinking about putting some darker greys in. And for the darker greys, we need to go back to the black. And I'm just going to put a bit out on the palette. Really, the teeny tiniest spot will do. Always put the lids on your paint straight away. It's no point in don't get into the habit of thinking I'll put them on at the end, because by that time the paint that's in the nozzle, whatever brand it is, will have dried and it's a nightmare then. So we need to be looking at the reference picture, and we need to be picking out where these dark or darker greys are. So we'll sort of attack it clockwise and put some dark greys in, darker greys. Don't get carried away like I just have. Black is a really, there's some pigments that are so strong that you just can't go near them sometimes. Black is one of those. Magenta's another. You put one drop of magenta into white, so strong. Right, so we've got this sort of mid-tone grey now. Well, it's light actually, more than mid-tone. And we're just going to have a look. Clean your brush off. Clean all that muck off your brush. And then load your brush up. We're going to have a look at our reference photo, see where the greys are. There's a grey coming in here. Now this is sort of separating the petals now for us. It's going to give us some definition. And that one's got a little sort of crease in it there. This comes around here. And I am shamelessly copying this. There's no reason why not to. You know, this is nature's photograph. Good enough for nature, mate. It's good enough for me. So we're putting in the greys to give us some petals. Where am I? That's that one. That's that one. Hasn't really got any on it. Just a little touch on the corner there. And this one's got a bit on the top here. Now you can see the difference of the greys. It makes a huge difference, really. Now this is where the lightest whites are. But even with that, there are bits of grey in here that sort of separate the petals. We don't want it just to look solid, like one solid petal. And here this comes around here. And that goes around that way. You can feather it in like that and make it look. Just pull it from where you've put your paint on. Just pull it slightly, and you'll get shading. Don't push your brush too hard. Where am I? Where am I? Here. No, there. Yeah, where are we? You can take your time about this, but I would say this is kind of more abstract than, you know, than true to life. So don't get carried away and don't get beating yourself up. All this is doing is teaching you how to hold a brush, how to mix some paint, just get you feeling like, oh, that feels nice to hold a paintbrush. I wouldn't mind doing that again. So I'm kind of rushing through this. This paint's drying, so I'm just going to use my demister and put some water on it. It's really quite warm in here, and if it's warm where you're working, the acrylic will dry really quickly. It does. Now then, we've got a little petal that's in the background here, so this is it. It's shaded because it's behind these two, like so. And this comes like that. Give it a bit of shade. I've got another one here. We're nearly there. We nearly made it all the way around. My goodness. It's only taken 3 hours. And that's quite a sharp line down there. Like that. Right, okay. We're kind of getting places. It could be a lot more refined than that. I mean, it should be, and it probably would have been if it wasn't that things had gone so horrendously wrong at the beginning that set my nerves all a quiver. I'm a nervous wreck. So what we need to do now is put the whitest whites on. Now this white that we've got on our palette here, was the mixing white. That's not what we want. We don't want that. We want the good stuff. So this is all dry, and once the acrylic's dry, you can't reactivate it. So, oh, that's rather too much. And golden's really expensive. I don't mean to put that much out. However, I've done it now. So all we need to do now is pick up the whitest white. And really trust your eyes here, not your brain. Trust what you are actually seeing on this reference picture. Where are the whitest whites? And they're down here, I think. So using the golden opaque titanium white, let's put some really, really strong highlights on here. Nice and white. Make it interesting. Around there. Now this is good for getting used to handling your brush, because you go in little spaces. Make sure you use the right white. So most of these have got some nice bright part to the petal. Not all. Have a look at your reference while you're doing it. Make sure that you've got it right by what you can see. It's quite a good test for what you actually can see, because your brain wants to tell you something that's sometimes not the truth. So we've got nice bright whites there. Is the camera picking that up? Can you actually see the bright whites as opposed to the silver white? I hope you can. Otherwise you just think I'm being a bit daft here. This has got some bright white on the tip of there. As I say, it's really a good way of getting to know how the paint comes off your brush, how to apply it, how the paint comes off. And you can't get it wrong. I mean, you know, you can't. Brighten these up a little bit. This angle shader is really good for doing this sort of thing. And it's all very well picking your brush up and doing that on a piece of paper and, oh yes, that's a nice brush. It's when you're using it, that's what you find out what it's actually like. You know, will it go around a corner? Will it lay paint down there for me? You need to use it. And this is a good little thing just to try it out on, really. Try it out on acrylic paper. Oh, look, I've got a blob of paint there that I really, really do not want. So the way to get rid of that is get a load of water on your brush, put it on your canvas and dab it. And it will come off. There we go. So now you've learnt how to get errant paint off your canvas, and it well, happens to me all the time. So where are we up to? These bits are quite bright white here. It's quite a good idea, if you can, when you're doing this, not to go up to the edge of each petal, to leave a gap, and then they look separate. Just leave a gap, a little gap between them. Right, okay, that's probably about as good as that's going to get in the before I bore you all to sleep, really. Okay, so what's that looking like? Got anywhere that's too dark? This is probably a bit too dark in here, I think, when I look at it. Just lighten that up a little bit. I'm going to leave the dark down the side of the petal, and I'm just going to feather it up from the bottom. This is where airbrushes are really at their best for shading and stuff. But you know, we're learning how to do it like this. Right, so let's have a look what we're looking at. I think that's okay. Do you think that's alright? Anybody got any comments? Anybody think it's crap?
This one looks like.
That's my first one, which you can see I was rather more careful with. But this is okay. This is in keeping with what we want to do. We want to learn, we want to do it relatively quickly, not spend hours fannying on over it. Just let's get something relatively abstracty, and I think that's all right. I'm relatively pleased with that. So now we're going back to the centre of here, and if you look at the reference photo again, as I pointed out earlier, the top, the higher up part of the centre is yellow, and the bottom part is more like that yellow ochre that we had before, or an orange. It's up to you. Use the colours that you've got, mix what you've got, and see what you're happy with. I mean, we used the yellow ochre before for the background ones. I'm going to cheat a little bit here, and I'm using cad yellow deep. I don't think I had that on the list of things that you need. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Right, so we could go back in and actually trace the centre. I think we kind of know where it is. You know, nobody's going to come round knocking at your door if this isn't actually perfect. I'm certainly not going to. So I don't know where you live. I could find you, Ziggy, at a push, mind you. But then again, you're naked in bed. Do I want to? Now, you might remember what I told you earlier about yellow. That yellow is a transparent colour. There are no opaque yellows. And so you have the issue of how you're going to make the yellow stand out on your painting. You see these yellow ochre ones that we did? They're very transparent, even although we did mix a bit of white with them, but we mixed cheap white. So what you could do is use the gold and titanium white, make yourself a centre in white, dry it off, and then put the yellow in. Or you could mix a good chunk of white in through the yellow to try and get rid of some of that transparency. I'm actually going to put the centre in with white and then paint over it. That's a kind of fail-safe way. Works every time. Why did I say that? When I said it, I thought, why did I say that? So we're just going to paint what we think is the centre in here.
So yellow only goes over white?
Yellow only goes over white. It just will not show up. I mean, maybe if you put 3,000 layers of it on, I don't know. Never done it. But as a general rule, no, yellow only goes over white. So that's it. I've kind of drawn the outside where I think it is. I'm going to colour the inside in with this lovely titanium white. And then I'll have to dry it, I'm afraid. So there we go. I'll just give that a quick dry. I just got my hand here to shield my paints from the heat because they dry so quickly. Okie dokie, that's good. Right, so using again my little 1/4" angle shader, I forgot to pick up a cocktail stick, so we're just going to put splotches in. If you've got a cocktail stick, you can dot the centre. I haven't. I'm going to put the light yellow at the top. See, even that, look, you see, it's fairly transparent. Let's go over the, make sure you go right over the white that you've painted on. Comes down there a little bit. And then the centre and the bottom part are actually a darker yellow, the yellow ochre. So that's still got a bit of life in it, thank goodness. This is actually now going to be a mixture because I had the cad yellow on my brush, so it's going to be a bit of a mixture. But it's a darker yellow, that's all you're aiming for. Just go around the edge, the shape that you've drawn. I hope you're going to give this a try, not because it's a blinking masterpiece, because I know it isn't, but it's a really good way to get your handling your brush, handling your paint, seeing what paint does, what it doesn't do, what you can do, what you can't do. That's a bit of a sudden gradation there. Let's get a bit more cad yellow on that. And just mix that in a little bit. Put a bit more, I'm going to put a bit more cadmium yellow, just on the top here. See if we can really brighten that up. No, that wasn't helpful. Okay, so yeah, great. All I want now is some dots on there, like you can see on the reference photo. There are some Zen Art are actually going to, they're just in the process of bringing out tiny, teeny brushes. Or you could use a cocktail stick. You know,
in the kitchen.
it doesn't matter. I'll use the corner of. That's fine. I use the corner of this. Fine. For a spot, if you want a tool to spot and you've got an old biro, a ballpoint pen that doesn't work anymore, just use the end of that. This will be fine though. I'll be fine with this. Just put a bit on your brush, a bit of the bright yellow. Just use the corner, dot. You can't really see it. You might can see it there. No, it's not really working very well. I might use the end of this pencil. That'll probably do. Yeah, look at that. You have to load things like this up really often. A cotton bud with no end on it. That's a good idea, isn't it? Just a handyman. Knows no bounds. So just dot it. I might have to use a mixture of colours here. Well, it's not really working brilliantly. I've got some white on there now. Oh well, never mind. Actually, white probably stands out better anyway. So I shall leave that problem with you, how to make your dots. I quite like these in white actually. I'm alright, I think. I'm dotting away. I'm going dotty. No, alright. Just the cotton wood, the ear swab thing's working alright. That's about as good as I can get without a proper tool. I've done that in white and it's obviously not white, but actually I quite like it, so we're all right. And that, ladies and gentlemen, apart from my signature, is it? So I'm going to sign it here, I think is a good place to sign it. I'm going to use white, and what you need to do is a long thin brush, sometimes called a rigger, sometimes called a fine liner, sometimes a script, but a long, look how long the hairs are, the bristles are on there, and because we're using heavy body, this brush will not deal with it, so you really have to make your paint quite liquid, and then roll it through the paint, keep rolling it, get a nice point, and I'll just put my initials down on the bottom. There we are. Once it's signed, it's done. So it's done. I hope you've enjoyed this. I really feel like it's been a bit of a sort of helter-skelter, and I don't know. I hope you've learnt something. I hope what you've learnt is not to not to be too, oh no, it's a little bit grey, there's a little bit white there. That's it, it's done. I quite like that. I don't see there's anything much wrong with it really. Have a go. The more that you have a go, the more you feel a paintbrush in your hand, the more you get to know the texture of paints and which paints are transparent, which are opaque, which mix nicely, which give you mud. All of that is learned stuff. There's nobody ever came walking out the womb with a paintbrush in their hand and said, give me a canvas. You know, you've got to practice. That's what it's all about, practice, practice. And I am not very much, as you can see, further along the route than you are. I did some painting years ago, but I've just started doing it again. And so, I'm very much a beginner. But really, practice. Please practice. And when you've done your daisy, please will you post it on the group. Let's all have a look. It's a safe place. The group is a safe place. If it isn't, if somebody steps out of line in any way, they are gone. I'm not having it. I'm not having people saying nasty things or being humiliating, or it's just not going to happen. This is a safe group. So when you've done your picture of your daisy, however you decide to do yours, it might be entirely different from this. Please will you post a picture. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at where the rest of us are, eh? But for me tonight, thank you very, very much for watching, and I'll see you soon when we will be attempting to do the fuchsia. Okay, thanks very much for bearing with me. I know it's been a bit of a trial, but I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.